welcome to our Humane at Home for our first Friday of December. And so we all know what that means. It's our Wildlife Day. I am Carly. I am the Education Specialist for Project Wildlife. And today, if you guys remember, I am joined with my dear friend Kate, who is now working with all of our lovely Project Wildlife volunteers, but she still dabbles in with the Project Wildlife education as well. But we're so excited to have you all joining us today. We have a very special animal for you. Kate is going to tell you all about, and then tune in again, stay tuned in, because this is a very special day. Today is Wildlife Conservation Day, and we're going to talk all about different things that we can do to help the animal you're about to meet, as well as all their friends out there in the wild. So, for no further ado, Ms. Kate, why don't you take it away and go ahead and talk about the very handsome little guy we have.
Yes, hi everybody. So today, as you can see from the large screen behind me, we are going to be talking about coast horned lizards. And I don't know if you can see her little picture that's on that screen. This is a coast horned lizard, and he is sticking his little tongue out at all of us. We actually have this little guy in the room right now. I don't know if you can see him. He's on the table in front of Miss Carly and me. We're going to be introducing you to him a little bit later in the presentation, because right now we're going to make sure he's comfortable and he feels a little bit safe, so he has the lid on and he's not going to get too bothered by us while we're talking. And then once we're ready to introduce him, we'll go ahead and pull that lid off and you guys can get up close and personal with this little guy. And hopefully he won't be so sassy and stick his little tongue out at us. But we are going to be talking all about coast horned lizards. So the first thing we're going to talk about is a little bit of their natural history. So basically where they live, what they eat, all that good stuff. As you can see, he kind of looks like a little grumpy old man at the beach who got buried by his kids when he was taking a nap. That's kind of just always what he looks like. Throughout this entire presentation, I take lots and lots of pictures of him, and you will see all of the various emotions that he has. Most of them are grumpy, like you can see in this picture here. But I think he puts up with us. I think he likes us. So, a little bit of natural history about these guys. Some people might know horned lizards better as horny toads, or horned frogs. They are very, very popular all over the United States, but specifically here in California and some of our neighboring states like Arizona, Texas, because that's where they're most commonly found. So we do have 22 species in total, but about 15 of them are found here in the United States. So the other ones can be found actually up in Canada, and then some go all the way down into Mexico and even some other North American countries down south. But we have about 15 here in the US, and most of them are found in desert and chaparral environments. So being a reptile, he needs a lot of heat to help him regulate his body temperature. So he definitely prefers to be in an area that's really hot, has lots of sand around that he can burrow in and hide from predators. And he definitely likes to have all sorts of different desert environments to live in. So that's primarily where they're found, but they can also be found in the mountains. There's a mountain horned lizard that can be found 10,000 feet up in the air. It is crazy. They're found all over the place, but primarily the desert is where they like to live. And a lot of them only eat ants. So if you didn't like them before, now you should really like them, because they only eat ants, and specifically an ant called the harvester ant. So harvester ants are actually a venomous little ant. But that venom is really, really important to a horned lizard's digestive system. So that venom has something called formic acid, and it helps his little body be healthy and make sure that he's growing properly, and it's really good for him actually. So he is out there, these guys are in the wild eating all these venomous ants. They're helping us out to no end. And most people will see them kind of along the coast. So again, like their name says, they're coast horned lizards is his species, and they are found from Sacramento Valley all the way down into Baja California. So again, they're primarily found in a desert environment, so they like the sand to bury in, they like that heat, and they like to be where their food is, of course, so where all the ants are. So that's primarily where these guys are found. But again, there are so many different types. And you can see, depending on where they live, what environment they like to live in, their coloring sort of mimics that environment. Because for a horned lizard, their number one method of defense is camouflage. They are really, really still out there because they are really good at blending. So you can see, like for a Texas horned lizard, if they're in more of a sandy environment with dunes and things like that, they're going to be a little more yellow and orange. They're going to have a little bit more colors. Maybe it'll be a little bit darker to sort of blend in with the rocks out there. If they're going to be a desert horned lizard, again with lots of rocks, you're going to have some speckles to blend in. And then some of them just plain look like a little rock, because again, they really want to blend in with their environments. And you'll see when we show you the horned lizard that we have here, he's really good about blending into his environment. This is another really cool slide, so you can see all of the skulls of these different horned lizards. So a lot of people know horned lizards, of course, because of their little horns. They look really cool. They look like a little crown on their heads. And what a lot of people don't know is those horns are actually bones. They're part of their skull. So you can see some of them, like the ones up top, don't have as many horns. But like right here, this is our coast horned lizard. You can see they have a pretty impressive little crown of horns. And those are used predominantly to defend him, right? So if something tried to pick him up or bother him in any way, he could sort of show the predator or whatever's bothering him his horns, and that would really, really protect him and enable him to get away or hurt the other animals so that he could escape. So that is another really good way that they defend themselves. But it's really cool that you can see it's actually attached to their skull. So they have awesome defenses. So like I was saying, one of the horned lizard's favorite things to do is hunt little ants. Now obviously in captivity, we have to sort of work with what we have and try to find other things that they can eat. So the coast horned lizard specifically is actually one that can eat all sorts of different little insects. So they might eat crickets, they might eat little grasshoppers, insect larvae, mealworms, things like that, just any little bug that they might find. And I have a couple little videos here to show you him hunting some crickets, which is one of his favorite activities. You can see he eyes it, he sees it, and then he goes for it. And sometimes the crickets get away because they are really, really fast. And he has had to learn how to hunt them. So you will see in this next video that I have here, he is stalking this little cricket like a little lion. So you can see his tail is wagging. His tail is wagging, and he is locked in on that little cricket, and he is going to do his best to just be really quiet, really slow, and then all of a sudden go crazy and try to grab it. Now when you see his little tail wagging, there's a couple different theories of why horned lizards do that. It honestly might just be because they're really excited and they can't contain it, so their little tails wag. It could also be, though, a way to sort of distract their prey. So if the prey sees or hears the little tail wagging, they might look at the tail instead of the big head that's about to eat them. So it could have a purpose, or it could just be a really cute way of him showing that he's excited. We don't know, but either way we love seeing it. Some other adaptations that make horned lizards amazing are, again, in this picture, they're kind of hidden, those big horns on the back of his head. But I want you all to see that his entire little body is covered in little horns and little spikes. Now, the horns on his head are actually part of his skull, right? They're bone. But all of these little horns and spikes around his body are actually just scales. They're just modified little scales. So when he sheds and he's growing, he actually sheds the layers off of those scales and continues to grow. So they're not actually made of bone, but they are pretty spiky still. So some other things that he actually might use those scales for, and those horns for, other than defending from predators, of course, is to bury himself in the sand. So just going back to this picture really quick, you can see how right underneath his chin, he has this little line of scales. And he actually uses those to sort of cut into the ground, and he vibrates his head really, really fast, and that's what helps him to bury in the sand. So he might bury in the sand to hide from predators, he might do it to take a nap, he might do it to heat up or to cool off, depending on how hot it is outside. So they'll bury in the sand for all different types of reasons, but they use those primarily to kind of dig their way in first, and then they'll use these side scales to kind of wiggle their whole little body in, and that's what really helps them to bury super well. So they do have a purpose other than looking really, really cool. And what's really awesome is they can use those scales to actually drink water. So when it rains in the desert, what the horned lizards will do is they'll actually go out and stand in the rain, and they arch their little back, and all of the scales on their back will kind of funnel the water towards their mouth, and that's how they drink. It's really, really cool. So other than the horns all over their body and the spikes on their heads, they do have some other defense mechanisms that are really cool. I'm sure some of you out there, if you do like horned lizards, have heard of one of them. Some horned lizard species, you guys, can shoot blood out of their eyes. Ew, I know it sounds disgusting, but it's a really, really good defense mechanism against some predators. So typically the predators that they'll use that on are mammals. So for example, if a coyote or a bobcat was trying to eat or bite at a horned lizard, they will shoot the blood out of their eyes, and the blood tastes disgusting. So they're not going to use the blood shooting for a bird or maybe a snake that doesn't really taste as well because it's not really going to bother them. But they will use it for a coyote or a bobcat or something like that, because the bobcat will get it in its mouth or in its eyes and go, ew, what is that? Blech, and drop the horned lizard, and then he can run away. Some other things that he might do before he shoots blood out of his eyes, though, because that's pretty extreme. He might just camouflage, be really, really still, and try to blend in. He might run really fast to try to confuse or disorient the predator. He might hiss, he might wag his tail, because just the tail wagging actually doesn't just work for prey, so remember it might distract prey. It can also distract predators. It can make the predator look at their tail and actually go after the tail. And then what do we know about lizards, you guys? They can actually detach their tails from their bodies. Horned lizards are no exception. So if the predator bites the tail that's moving, he can detach it and then he can make his little escape. So there's lots and lots of different mechanisms that they use to defend themselves, and it really depends on the threat. So remember, he might shoot blood out of his eyes if it's a coyote. If it's a really, really fast snake that's coming after him, he's not going to try to run away. He's going to freeze and camouflage. He's going to really try to do his best to survive and get away from that predator. So I wanted to show you guys just one or two other videos really, really quickly. Over here you can see more tail wagging. I'm sorry, I had to include it because it's so cute. There's lots of crickets and bugs in that little rock, and he'll just sit out there and watch them and wag his little tail because he's excited to see them and he's waiting for them to come out. It's adorable. I'm sorry, it just doesn't get much cuter. And then over here, I managed to capture this little video of him finally burying. So you can see he's kind of sussing out the little spot. He's seeing if he has enough sand, and he's going to back up and he kind of shakes his head back and forth, and you see him shake his whole little body. And then see, he's still kind of learning how to bury. I promise you there is plenty of sand there. He's just still learning how to get his whole body underneath. Sometimes I'll come in the morning and just his little head will be appeared and the rest of his body will be under the sand. It's really, really cute. So there are some threats to the species, of course. So one thing is obviously when we're building all of our houses and malls and all sorts of things, unfortunately that does take up some of their habitat. So of course that's one thing. Farming is kind of just when people clear big plots of land to plant other things. It kind of changes the habitat and maybe kills off some of the prey species. When they use pesticides, which obviously is no good because if there's no food, then the horned lizards can't live there. There's also lots of invasive species, specifically invasive ant species, that will compete with those harvester ants that we were talking about. So there are things called Argentine or fire ants that are out competing. They're beating out the little harvester ants that are horned lizards' absolute favorite little snack. And so if there are alien species of ants, like the Argentine ants, the horned lizards don't want to eat those. They don't taste as good, and they don't have that formic acid, that venom, that really helps their digestive system. So the horned lizards can't live there, so they have to move on. So those are some reasons that they are maybe, you're not seeing them as much, because I've had a lot of people say, oh my gosh, I used to see horned lizards all the time when I was younger, and now I never see them. And these are a couple of the reasons why. And another really, really big reason, unfortunately, is because a lot of people see horned lizards out in the wild, and they're really cool, and they see those big spikes, and they say, oh my gosh, that is so cool, I want it to be a pet. I want to keep that in my house. And remember, what's one thing that they might do to defend themselves, or if they see a big scary predator coming, they'll just freeze, and they'll just sit there. And so a lot of people take that as, oh, they're so docile, I'm just going to scoop him up and bring him into my house. Do you all think that horned lizards want to live in our houses? Nope. They want to live out in the deserts, they want to be hunting little harvester ants, and they want to be left alone, right? Like all wild animals. But sadly, a lot of people see them, they think they're really cool, and they're able to pick them up, so they unfortunately take them. And there was a huge exotic pet trade of them a really long time ago, a couple decades ago. It's definitely gotten a lot better as people have realized these guys don't do too well in captivity, because remember, they need that really specific diet. As a reptile, they also need all of that heating, the UVA and the UVB lights, which we're going to talk about in a second. Because when you do have them in care, like we have this guy, remember, we don't have him as a pet. He is not our pet. We do not want to have a horned lizard in care, but sometimes they come to us and we are unable to release them back out into the wild. So we have to really make sure that we are giving him as natural an environment as possible while he's with us. But we never want to encourage people to ever take these guys out of the wild, because remember, that's where they really want to be. But since he is here with us, because he can't be released, we want to mimic his natural environment as much as possible. So you can see in his much larger house, because this is of course not his regular house, this is just a tiny little display case, so you guys can get a little closer to him. But the house that he lives in is really, really big. This is just a little piece of it. And he has plenty of sand to bury in. He has little basking rocks, little hides that he can hide and take shelter in. And there's lots of lamps on top of this place, on top of his little house, that keep him warm and that give him those UVA and UVB rays to make sure that he is staying healthy and he's growing properly and he's able to digest his food and all of that good stuff. So we're making sure that he has a natural environment. We're giving him lots of different food options. So we give him moth larvae, we give him mealworms, we give him crickets, we give him little beetles. We do give him ants every once in a while when we can. And all of those things, we make sure that he gets the supplements that he needs as well. So remember that formic acid is really important for his little stomach. So we make sure he gets that too, so that he's growing properly and he's staying healthy. We are really careful not to overhandle him, because these lizards do not like to be handled very much. Remember, a lot of people think, oh, if they freeze and they let me pick them up, then they want to be picked up. That's not true at all. When they freeze and they kind of hunker down and let you pick them up, it's just because they're scared and they don't know what else to do. So we are really careful not to overhandle him so we don't stress him out. But we do every now and then have to handle him to track his weight, because one of the best ways to track if he's healthy and if he's growing properly is to make sure he's gaining weight. Especially this little guy that we have in care, because he came in when he was really, really small. So we wanted to make sure that he was growing properly with us. So, without further ado, I am going to take his little lid off so you guys can get a little bit closer to...
So unfortunately, friends, this lovely little lizard, he was picked up from Yosemite, and he was brought into our care center, and he was deemed healthy, and we tried to work with the park rangers up in Yosemite to go and take him back up there, but unfortunately they were afraid that he might bring back any other diseases with him that could be introduced to the other coast horn species up there, and we wanted to make sure that we didn't spread that to anybody else. But what we really wanted to do, though, our friends, is that since he can't be released back out, he is going to be a wonderful education ambassador to teach people about his cousins. Like we always say, with any wild animal, my friends, they do not want to be your pets. That is why we work with the San Diego Humane Society. We have a ton of animals who want to be in your home and be adopted and be loved on. But our wild animals, we want to make sure we keep them as wild as possible. Like Miss Kate was saying in a beautiful way, although he is with us, we try to mimic everything the best as possible. And we have a staff of about 15 animal caregivers. We have vet staff here on staff, as well as our education team. So he has a lot of eyes looking out for him. This is definitely something that we want to make sure that everyone knows, that we don't have him. He's not our pet. If we could have released him back out, that is absolutely what we would have wanted to do with this little guy. But for now, if he can't go back out to the wild, at least he can help educate people about all of his cousins, all the different cousins he has out there, all those amazing adaptations he has, and again, the perks of pests. A lot of people hate ants, they hate mosquitoes, they hate all these things that can bug us. But remember, all those animals, all those pests or insects are a food source for a ton of other animals. So just because we may not like one particular insect doesn't mean they don't have a super important role in the ecosystem. But this little kid is too cute, and I'm super happy that we're able to use him, utilize him as an education animal, and especially on a day like today, which is Wildlife Conservation Day. And the 2020 theme is sustaining all life on Earth. So not just in San Diego, not just California, not just the United States, but the entire world, my friends. All these animals, plants and animals, really need our help. We really need to start doing our part to help these animals out, help out the plants. So again, making sure if we can plant more trees, make sure that we're not using pesticides, we're not using rodenticides, we're using more humane methods to encourage their departure. Orange oil has been super popular with ants and termites and everything. So looking for those more humane deterrents to encourage those animals to move on versus poisoning or killing them, because all those animals play a super important role. And so it's really important, especially on today, think about what you love about being outdoors. Think about nature. Think about how important it is, especially during this year that we've had. Without getting outside, getting outdoors to keep our own sanity, how much we want to protect that as well. So think about what we can do towards the end of the year. What can we do ourselves to help out our little cousins, our little wildlife cousins out here, and do our part to help these animals out as much as possible. Again, friends, here at Project Wildlife, if you ever find a sick, injured, or orphaned wild animal, please bring them into our center as soon as possible so we can get them healthy, get them rehabilitated, and if we can, get them released back out to the wild. But without that, just if we don't have any questions, Ms. Lauren, well, I think Kate covered a whole lot of those topics about this coast horned lizard. And we were so excited that we were able to steal her for today and have her be a part of this presentation. We do miss Miss Kate very much.
I miss you guys too.
But without that, my friends, stay tuned, because this little lizard does not have a name yet. We don't know the sex of this lizard yet, so it could be a girl, it could be a boy, we're not quite sure. But stay tuned and watch out on the website, because we may come out and ask you for your help in naming the lizard. So we'll get to that to you, but tune back in next Friday at 4 o'clock. It'll be Miss Stacy again, and I think you guys will be checking out our new campus in El Cajon as well. But thank you everyone for joining us today. Have a wonderful weekend. Happy Friday, everyone.
Bye, everyone.